Thorny, as we venture into the R&R, two truths are consistent. We love our dear Montana state, and we love great beer. And you know who else feels the same? Jeremiah Johnson Brewing. Brewed in the heart of Montana in downtown Great Falls, Jeremiah Johnson takes Montana's finest ingredients to craft some of Montana's favorite beers. And now, Jeremiah Johnson's second tap room is open in downtown Coeur d'Alene. Their Citra IPA is probably one of my favorites. But we all know, Thorny, you're not the hop lover I am. You're more of a mountain man Scotch ale.
Well, Foley, I'm certainly not a mountain man, but you are right. I do love their Mountain Man Scotch Ale. But come game day, you and I are both cracking their Golden Bobcat Pale Ale. So when you're looking for a quality craft beer brewed with Montana roots, a relaxing tap room, or just a six-pack to take to your favorite Bobcat tailgate, Jeremiah Johnson delivers. Make your next beer a Jeremiah Johnson, and as always, go Cats.
Welcome, everybody, to the R&R Catcast, a fan-based podcast focusing on Montana State athletics. We're two dudes named Ryan from the state of Washington talking about our dear Montana State. We hope you enjoy. All right. Welcome back, Bobcat fans. Thanks for joining us on another episode of the R&R Catcast. I'm one of your hosts, Ryan Foley. Across the state from me is my good buddy, Ryan Thornburg. We are the Ryans of the R&R Catcast, the Montana State affiliate of the Big Sky Podcast Network. And we have a dang sponsor in Jeremiah Johnson Brewing, brewing awesome beers in downtown Great Falls with a second tap room over in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. Thorny, how you doing tonight, buddy?
Doing fantastic. You know why? We just got done interviewing Alex Eschelman, ABC Fox Montana SWX sports reporter. Just a little segment we just did with Alex, talking about the Bobcats, the year that was, stuff coming up, 4th of July, everything. So I'm doing good because that was a fun episode with Alex.
Yeah, I really appreciate Alex. I mean, you and I obviously live in Washington and we have to view from afar, and she does such great work. She helps us live vicariously through the Bobcats as fans. It was awesome talking with her. I know our listeners are going to enjoy this one.
I mean, it's people like her that allow us to be able to stay connected to the Bobcats through little video segments. Right? Like she's so good on the, the Bobcat Insider with ex co-host Zach Mackey, I guess. She's so good on that, and it's just, it was really fun to have her on, kind of to pick her brain about what it's like covering the Bobcats and coming from like Arizona and California, just coming to Bozeman, Montana, and see what that journey was like for her was pretty interesting.
Yeah, and she even said we could get a hold of her and within the season, and we'd be able to talk to her again. I hope we can do that. I mean, I plan
back on.
So yeah, for sure. Anyways, hey, let's get right to it. Let's play that interview with Alex Eschelman right now. All right. Now we welcome in special guest, Alex Eschelman, ABC Fox, Montana, SWX sports reporter. Long time coming. We finally got her on. We're so happy to have Alex with us. Alex, how are you doing tonight? Thanks for joining us.
You guys, Ryan, I am so pumped to be on your show. I just told you that about 5 times before we actually started talking and doing the full podcast here. But let me tell you, I moved to Bozeman in May of 2020, and I knew very little about Montana State and Bozeman. I'd never been there. And I'm like, okay, I need an outlet. I need a couple of experts that I can lean on. And your guys' podcast has been it. So I am so thrilled to be talking to you guys right now.
Experts. Well, I don't know about that. I'm an expert at watching Bobcat football, but understanding and talking about it's a whole different story. But I watch a lot of it, so I'm an expert, I guess.
You are.
Okay.
I consider you an expert.
Appreciate it. That will go right to my head. Thank you.
That is quite the compliment coming from a broadcast journalism major. Absolutely. Right there. So thank you so much. Okay, well, let's get into the meat and potatoes of having Alex here. I mean, we want to talk to her and learn some stuff from Alex. So, Alex, our first question to you is, We got to know your Bozeman story. Like, how did you end up in Bozeman, Montana?
It's a great question. And I really do like telling the story because it's one of those things that, and whether you're religious or not, whatever you want to be, totally cool. I grew up, religious. And so it was just kind of a God thing. I really think so.
Mm-hmm.
I was just, I was at the Pac-12 network at the time in San Francisco, and I loved my time there. Still to this day have, some of my closest mentors and friends from there. But I did realize, I'm like, you know what, if I really want to be on air and I want to try being a TV broadcaster, I have to go somewhere where I can really cut my teeth and really work on it. So I just started sending my reel out to as many places as possible. And I actually have family in Bozeman. I have two cousins. Their names are Dominic and Adoni. I love them very much. I grew up with them in Northern California. They're more like brothers to me, and they chose to go to Montana State, and they've loved it so much that they are still here, and they will probably be here for the rest of their lives. Their mom and dad, my aunt and uncle, live out in Livingston. So I knew that I had family out here. And one day I just said, you know what, I wonder if Bozeman has any TV stations. And I looked up the station that I'm currently working at. They had posted my job that day, and I applied and signed my contract the day before the world shut down with COVID. I want to say it was March 13th or March 16th, something like that. It was the day before the NBA. I just remember the NBA saying, like, we're not stepping onto the court. And from there, everything started shutting down. I mean, we all remember it. So it was a pretty surreal moment when my company said, if we waited a day later for you to sign your contract, we wouldn't have been able to have you work here.
So you had almost the best timing in the world. You say they posted that job the day you just happened to be looking on the website?
Yes.
That's fantastic.
Yes, it was a fate thing for sure. And I moved here at the end of April in 2020. That was a surreal moment, being that, nobody was in the airport at the time. And I had never been to Bozeman, but started May 1st, and it was arguably the best decision I've ever made. I'm very, very happy with it.
Yeah, definitely sounds like a blessed thing in your life. And that is a really cool story. But that puts you kind of in a pickle because you come to Bozeman and you need to endear yourself to the MSU athletics department. And then all of a sudden you have COVID-19, a worldwide pandemic happening. That must have been hard.
It was really hard. And that's a great point that you bring up, because I called my dad crying at one point. I want to say 3 months in, I'm like, Dad, I just don't know if I'm ever going to be on TV. And he just he always brings that up and just laughs, because he's also tells me this. He's like, I love you so much, but you definitely are dramatic and you're impatient sometimes. And that was one of those moments where I was being dramatic and impatient. And he said, you just gotta wait a little bit longer and keep doing what you're doing, keep getting acclimated to Bozeman. And, it's all worked out. But I will say you are totally right. When I moved here, I just remember, so Annika Cook was in my position before me. A wonderful person, was such a great outlet for me when I first moved here. And she just gave me a bunch of contacts. She said, here's all these people that you're going to be in contact with. Just give them a call or shoot them a text and just try to get to know them that way. So I went down the line. I had a phone call with Dan Davies, with Bill Lamberty, months before I even saw these people in person, Zach Mackey, and just tried to get in touch with as many people as possible. And it was also weird because I met Coach Choate for the first time over Zoom, Coach Sprinkle, Coach Ben, players. I had not seen these people for at least 6 months, really. Not really until 2021. So It was definitely an interesting time, but I feel like everybody can relate to that. And just kind of having to adapt. At the same time, it was such a beautiful experience too, because I got to get really close with my coworkers, the few coworkers that I did, that I was able to work with in the office. We were able to get really close. And thankfully, Montana wasn't always completely shut down. So you could always kind of socialize in some form. So it wasn't the worst thing, but yes, it was definitely weird in terms of not being able to really interact with Montana State until at least 6 months later.
So outside of just what you said, did you have any unexpected surprises that came out of that time?
That's a great follow-up question. Yes, I would
I'm
definitely
chock full of them.
Yeah, no, that was a great question. Unexpected surprises. In what sense? Maybe in terms of like what
Well,
I originally thought of Montana or of Montana State athletics, anything like.
I would just, when I wrote that question, I was thinking about you and your position. I was like, well, you came here to, or you came to Bozeman to cover Montana State athletics. And then the protocols around Montana State athletics that time, I would imagine, was pretty shut down. Like you said, you were visiting with Coach Chode, Coach Ben over
Right.
Zoom or Skype. And so the hands-on portion to the job seems a little bit hands-off, or at least at arm's distance, right? And so I was just wondering, like, man, like that was probably a hard time, but was there anything you looked back, you go, man, I'm glad that it happened that way because it allowed for this to happen?
Oh, absolutely. Okay. Yeah. How you just said that was perfect because yes, I was so bad on camera when I first started. And just being able to, and even now, I mean, there's just so many things that you learn and you look back at your work that you did a few months ago and you're like, oh my God, that was terrible. But you do grow and you don't even really realize it. And in that COVID time, I was able to really work on developing myself and just being myself in front of a camera at much smaller events than Montana State. And I did not realize I needed that until I got to the 2021 football season, where I knew how to smile and be myself and talk about whatever I wanted to talk about on camera. Whereas a year prior to that, I had no idea. So I am so thankful that, as weird as that is to say, that COVID gave me that. And I also think that it kind of brought everyone together in a weird way, because when I was finally able to meet all these people, it was so special. And I think that is a part of why the 2021 season, not beyond football, basketball, the whole thing was so special too, because it was so different the year before.
Yeah. Well, it was a good question I thought of, and I'm glad you answered that, because there's some things like in the midst of trials and like pandemics, you can still find really good things that come out of that.
You're right.
Let's fast forward to a little bit, like one of the major stories you covered right away, and I think it was one of the introductions I had to you was the Jeff Choate Coach Vegan transition. And I don't want to hash that out, but I did have a specific question around that topic. Was I wanted to know who stepped up during that time. Who did you see in the program as leaders? And it could be players, it could be administration, but who did you see that took the reins and guided Montana State during that time?
Ooh, that's a really good question. Well, going back to the COVID thing a little bit, I think it was a little tough to see exactly who was stepping up, because we still weren't really around anybody in person quite yet, at least in the football department. Because basketball at that time, it was around February of last year, we were covering basketball, but I had not covered really a lick of football. The first time I ever saw, when did I see? I really didn't see a lot of the football team until spring, when Vegan was already there. So I would say I do. There was one name that popped out in my mind though, and I really believe it was Leon Costello. I think that he's a really, really good athletic director, and I think that he is able. I think he steps up. I think he steps up when he needs to step up. And when you ask me that question, I think the one person that really stands out when thinking about who kind of took the reins of the hiring process, and when we had a press conference with him, I felt like he was very calm and sure about where the program was going to go, despite the fact he probably had no idea where the program was going to go. I mean, I would have to talk to him about that, but I'm sure the way he was feeling, he did not portray any worry or panic. And they made the right decision.
Well, we definitely agree. I think the decision was correct as well, but definitely agree that Leon Costello has been just a huge asset Montana State since he arrived. He's really kind of, brought the program up from where it even was just a few years ago. So we're happy to have Leon on the team here. I'm going to focus a little bit more in-depth questions about the last season. Not real in-depth, but we're going to focus a little bit more on the season that many have called, and us included, have called the year of the Bobcats, because like unheralded, unseen success from all the programs at the same time, kind of culminating, was pretty awesome. But a question I have about football and the historic run that MSU ran to the national championship there. What do you think endears Coach Vigen to the team, and how did he maybe galvanize the team to make that run to the national championship?
Oh gosh, you guys have such great questions, and I shouldn't even be surprised because I listen to this podcast every week. I think the greatest thing about Coach Vigen, well, first of all, before I talk up Coach Vigen, I have to say I think one of the main reasons, and arguably I think the number one reason why that team was so successful, is the senior leadership. I think that you cannot replace the Troy Andersons, the Lewis kids. I mean, that whole Chase Benson. I mean, you could go on and on about all of them individually. Amandre Williams, Tucker Rovig. I mean, that group, Daniel Hardy, I'm just thinking of them as I'm kind of talking about them. Sure. But that whole group, I think, was so unique. And I think that they are the main reason why they were as successful as they were, in my opinion. Not saying that Coach Vigen wasn't the reason for their success. I think that he is an incredible coach, and I think that he stepped into a role that was a very tough one because people loved Coach Choate. And I've said this before, but it was like when he left, it was like your first love that you had a big breakup with, and you thought you were never going to love somebody else again. And that's how it felt with Coach Choate, in my opinion.
Ryan's pointing to himself over there on the camera because he's like, that was me. That's it. That was Foley's experience with it for sure.
And rightfully so. I mean, just a quick bit about Coach Choate. You guys have to watch the Miracle in Missoula, Dawson Arenstorff.
That's right. Haven't seen that yet.
Documentary, because it will bring. I mean, I wasn't here for the Coach Choate era, but for guys like you, it'll probably bring a tear to your eye, because you're going to be like, yes, this is what Coach Choate was all about. And it was awesome. The documentary perfectly shows how he made players feel like they wanted to run through a wall for him. So anyway, that's aside from the fact Coach Vigen stepped into a really tough role. And I think he did it with such poise and grace. And he never seemed flustered. Ever, literally. I mean, from the time he got there till the last game, he has always been professional, cool, calm, collected. He has treated all the reporters, everybody I've, been around with him, with respect. And as I think for the players, how he helped galvanize the success of last year is the fact that he was so intelligent, and you could see it. Like, he's 5 steps ahead of everybody. He knows exactly what he's doing. He's prepared, and he's the type of person that you easily know him for 5 seconds and you're like, okay, I trust this guy. Yeah, I understand where I don't maybe don't understand his exact vision, but I know he has a plan on how he's going to get us there. So I think that's how he really took Montana State football by the horns and went with it.
Why don't you just ask that question? You just typed it out, fully. Just ask it.
Oh, I just said we've heard that that he's a very endearing guy because he's very trustworthy, and so you just echoed that, and that's all I was writing right there.
Okay.
Tony.
I was like, what do you want me to say here? Sorry, that was one of those awkward pauses we were talking about. I was just like pointing at him, just ask the question.
Trust me, I get it. Don't worry.
Well, kind of piggybacking off that run. Just what was the fervor like covering the Cats as they went through the playoffs and the first national championship appearance, since 1984? What was that like, just kind of covering that and just kind of the buzz around town and around the media and everything?
A lot of the players said it after they won the semifinal game. Surreal. That's the number one word. And I think that, I mentioned my crying story to my dad, and I mentioned that story, and I meant, there were times throughout that my first year being in Bozeman where I was like, gosh, I don't get to cover Montana State football this year. I don't get to cover, thank God I got to cover Montana State basketball, and we were able to figure that out, and volleyball. But, there was a part of me when the COVID thing happened, and I think everybody felt that way. It was like, are we seriously not going to have a football season this year? And I think that, a year later, and how successful Montana State season, it just happened the way it was supposed to. And it was so rewarding to be a part of that successful year, and just so special and surreal. And I really even think about too, I lucked out because you guys have been through the ups and the downs and through every step of the way. And I really think about the true fans who have been with the Bobcats through thick and thin, and being able to watch everybody who have been fans for decades, celebrate their success was just surreal.
Yeah, there was it seemed like the whole generation just waiting for that moment after the South Dakota State victory, just like people crying, like, hey, we finally made it. We finally got to see this in our lifetime. And, I was so sad that I couldn't make it. I think it was the flights were ridiculous, or the hotels, or both. One of the two. I just couldn't swing it, especially since we're like, well, if we go to the national championship, I can only afford one of these, So, yeah, we made the right call in the end, I guess. But yeah, it just seemed like such a cool thing, and it's always fun to talk to someone who was there, especially covering the team, because we're not in Bozeman, we don't get to really interact with anybody. So, thanks for sharing a little bit of the, what that was like from your perspective.
Of course, yeah. That one game, it's funny. I'm happy you guys brought up the season and brought up that game, because I was actually just sitting down with Jack Murray, the amazing videographer for Montana State, one of them. And we were just kind of reminiscing of just a big group of us. And we were talking about, some of the favorite things that he's covered or his favorite moments. Cause he's been in Bozeman for, about 9-10 years. And he said that semifinal game, it was just one of those things where everybody remembers where they were at, and everybody remembers the moment and the sounds and the smells and the feel. And it really was, it was incredible.
It was incredible. And, going to transition a little bit away from football here. It was an incredible year for a lot of other teams too. The men's team winning conference championship and going all the way to the big dance. The women's team doing the same thing. Track and field, all historic years. Only the football team didn't win a conference trophy, ironically there. I have a question for you, though, and this is a question we put on Twitter, and it was actually pretty evenly split. It was a historic year for all those programs, the big three. We'll talk about the big three here, the football team, the men's basketball, and the women's basketball. Which team do you think has the best chance of replicating or surpassing their success from this year? Who's poised to make another run there?
So I voted on this.
You did?
I did vote because I told you I'm a big R&R Catcast fan and I follow all this stuff. And I did vote on this, and I'm sorry, Coach Ben. I love you. I'm sorry, Coach Vegan. I think you're awesome. I think it is men's basketball.
Oh.
I think Oh no! What do you think?
No, nothing like that. He's
that's just surprising. I like it.
Yeah, he likes it. He's excited about it.
I think it's men's basketball. I think it's men's basketball 100% without a doubt. I think that Danny Sprinkle is so hyper focused on the success of Montana State's program. I mean, he goes to frat houses to recruit. I mean, not to go party. I'm not trying to say that he's going to go be a party animal. But he does everything in his power to get people to those games. And there's nothing more that he wants than having the Brick Breeden Fieldhouse be the it spot for basketball, and have it be a basketball place. And the transformation that I've seen in my 2 years of covering his team, he and his team, has been night and day. And I think Chris Haslam said this to me at when we were all in San Diego, and we were just talking about Coach Sprinkle and the team. And he said, mark my words right now, Danny will at one point be a Power 5. Now, I don't know if we can even say Power 5 anymore, because, we have to talk. That's a whole other conversation. Whatever's going to happen with the Power 5, Power 4, whatever. But he's going to be a big time coach, a major coach at one point. He's that good. And you see that with how disciplined he is within his coaching and in his practices, and his motivation to get his team back to where they were last year. And I feel confident that they'll do it again.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that, because, between those three teams, it was, women's, I think, is probably the one I would have put on the top of my list, and football maybe second, but it's all neck and neck. And Sprinkle has done a great job. And, kind of some news here to talk about today. Looks like, MSU hired the replacement for Dan Russell, the assistant coach who went to Utah State. Where did he go? Weber State? Did he go to Weber State?
Weber State.
Yeah, he went to Weber. That's right. So we bring in Andy Hill, who's been around the Big Sky for some time. So that's a kind of exciting hire, I think. So that's only going to help, I think, your opinion that the men's team is going to have the best season coming forward. So exciting times in Bobcat basketball for sure.
What do you guys think?
I think the women will be pick number one to win the conference.
Okay.
I don't know if anyone else will be pick number one. I don't think the football team will, and the men might. It might be pick number one. But I think the women have the best, most returning talent. They got Darian White. It's hard not to pick them.
I voted women's basketball in that poll, Thorny. I did vote in that as well. Women's basketball. I think men's basketball. The thing that surprised me, I would have put men's basketball as third. We just lost such good senior leadership on that team, just like our football team did. But it's a numbers game in basketball, so I don't know. But I love your answer. Alex, let's look forward. We're on the cusp of, oh my word, I've never said this before, but the 22-23 academic athletic year. That's kind of crazy to think about. Question for you on this is, what kind of stories are you looking for, or maybe that you're pinning out right now as the season approaches?
It's a great question. It's another great question. And I think that what we've been talking about, it defines the question of this upcoming season. How are the Bobcats going to outdo the year of the Bobcat? Right? I think that that's my number one question. I mean, what happened last year was just so special across the board. And we didn't even touch on, track and field, the ski team. I mean, there were records broken all across the board, everywhere. And I think that's the biggest storyline, is how are we going to build off of that? And I think that, that's definitely the number one question mark. In terms of football, I am really curious to see, and maybe this is more of a basic storyline, but how Tommy Millott continues to step up. It's very clear that he has won the team over. I mean, being at spring ball and at all those practices, his team adores him, and rightfully so, because he is close to like a perfect human being. I think he gets A++. He's like Troy Anderson. Like they just don't do anything wrong ever. Whether that is in the classroom or on the football field or in anything in life. So I'm interested to see how he continues to develop and where Sean Chambers fits into that. I think that Sean Chambers is very talented, and I'm curious to see that kind of quarterback battle this upcoming season. I think it's going to be interesting to see how the guys up front do and how they are able to battle it out up front. I also think, I'm thinking also senior leadership. Like I touched on earlier in the podcast, there was such a distinct group of senior leaders. And obviously, I'm not saying that these guys aren't. It's just going to be interesting to see how RJ Fitzgerald and Ty Okada and Jeffrey Manning, all those guys step up.
I have a question for you that popped into my head as you were talking there about Tommy Millott specifically. It made me remember that, the Big Sky Conference nominations were submitted here this week for the media guide and all that stuff. MSU submitted Tommy Millott as their candidate for Player of the Year, Offensive Player of the Year, and not Isaiah Fonse. What do you think about that?
That's real. That is interesting.
Yeah. I thought that was pretty interesting when I saw that. I was like, they must have a lot of faith in Tommy Millott to submit him as a candidate for Player of the Year over like a guy who's most likely going to be an All-American.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah. That's a very good question. I'll say this. I'm sure there was definitely reason behind choosing Tommy Millott, and I don't think it is a total, a total surprise, but I don't know where you guys stand in that. It sounds as though you guys would go with Isaiah Fonse, and I would probably agree.
I mean, honestly, I haven't really paid attention to the nominations before. Like, we don't really get too deep into the media side of things because we don't like to really think that we are media, even though we kind of are in a lot of ways. We pretend that we're not. But I just happened to see that, and it just kind of caught my eye. So I don't even think I've even talked to Ryan about it. I just kind of just spitballed that, through a curveball at you on that one right there.
Yeah. No, you know what? I think Tommy Millott is still a great, fantastic selection. I think I can see why, there would be a question mark there, just because Isaiah Fonse is first and foremost a senior leader on the squad, and second of all, he's arguably the most, has put up the most numbers and is one of the most talented kids on the team by far. But I don't think Tommy Millott's like a bad selection at all. I think he's a great selection.
Yeah. I think I would also put in there for, as far as like what you might be looking for in this upcoming season. Something I'm looking for is like, how is the team going to continue to develop under Coach Vegan? Because you talked about so much about the senior leadership, and those were Choate players, and those were Choate guys, and I think a lot of fans are just kind of still waiting. You're like, well, how's this going to pan out? And so that's something afar, like Ryan and I look from afar. We're just like, what's the culture like? Is it continuing to be a player's culture as we see? And so that's something that I'm going to keep my eye on.
It's another great question that you throw out there. That's for sure. Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
All right. I do have an easier question for you. It just came out today that Montana State's going to have 2 night games now. So we're going to have the Gold Rush game starting at 6:05, and then we're playing UC Davis starting at 8:10. A kickoff of 8:10, and then hopefully being on ESPN2, or it could be on ESPNU. As a reporter, how do you feel about night games?
I am no stranger to night games because I was a cheerleader at the University of Arizona. And that is all we had was night games. I think we had one day game. It was against UCLA. It was college game day, and it was terrible. We got our butts kicked, and I think it was on the field over 100 degrees. It was terrible. So I am very used to night games. However, the UC Davis Montana State game, October 1st at 8 p.m. at night, does not sound very pleasant weather-wise. That could be a toss-up. So as a reporter, it'll definitely be interesting. I mean, you bring up a good point because, you have to meet deadlines and everything like that. I would assume that, our approach would probably be just blast it out on social and then try to get in whatever we can in the late show and then really go all out on Sunday, and then the following week. But it's a very good question. I personally love day games because I feel like it is college football to me. Friday night football games is very high school feel to me, and which is ironic because that's all I cheered for in college was night games. But I prefer day games for college football because it just feels more college football to me. What do you guys think?
I think it's cool having games under the lights once in a while as like a special thing, or if there's going to be an ESPN crew in town or something, that seems pretty cool. Definitely wouldn't want it to be a regular thing, and obviously in Montana you could not have it be a regular thing. You would freeze to death. But I think it's cool. I think 8:10's pretty late kickoff, but overall, I'm excited to have a night game on like an ESPN network, so I'm pretty excited about that.
Oh yeah, no, I think it's fantastic. I think in terms of the ability to have it on ESPN is fantastic.
Absolutely. I agree with that. I got a question here about your Arizona Wildcats there. What conference are they going to be in next week?
That is a great question. That is a great question. Holy cow. I'm going to go, if I had to bet on a conference that they're going to go to, and I love U of A football, but I'm saying this in terms of basketball and everything else. Maybe like Big 12. Go Big 12, I guess.
Yeah, it's a hard one. Like that.
I have no
the schools
idea.
Like I don't feel like there's a good choice for Arizona State. Like Pac. Might as well just stay in the Pac. Assuming Oregon and Washington stay, but if they leave, then probably go to the Big 12.
I don't know if there will be any decision.
It's a mess.
I have no
it's
idea.
A mess.
It's a mess.
I didn't have a good answer for it. I didn't know if you would, or probably didn't think you would, but just thought I'd ask because it is the topic of conversation across everywhere right now because it could impact Montana State eventually, and we're going to actually record an episode about that next week where we talk a little bit about an FBS move. But just wanted your quick thoughts on Arizona and where they could possibly end up.
Can we agree on one thing though? This college football off season, between the Jimbo and the Nick Saban blow up breakup on national TV, and now UCLA and USC deciding that they're going to go to a completely different conference out of nowhere, is the best off-season drama that you could possibly ask for.
I'm definitely glued to Twitter for conference realignment stuff. And, I'm also a Phoenix Suns fan, and I'm sitting here waiting come on, Kevin Durant, you going to sign with the Suns or not? Because that's the big rumor going around now is that Durant will come down to Phoenix and play with Chris Paul and Devin Booker, and I'm hoping that does happen. But between those two things, it's been a lot of interesting off-season stuff to pay attention to.
Completely.
All right. Well, Alex, I think that's all the questions we have for you. I really want to, say thanks for coming on to the show. We really appreciate it.
Oh my gosh, you guys. I'm so flattered you even asked. And I have one question for you.
That's right.
Favorite, I know you guys always have your little beer segment. What's my new upcoming like Montana beer that I need to be like, that needs to be my favorite?
Is this where we
or if you could,
clearly
or if
plug
you
our
could pick your,
sponsor
like,
here, Jeremiah?
Yeah.
Jeez. Yeah. Anything Jeremiah Johnson.
Contractually obligated.
I would honestly, like, when I think about Montana beers, there's two beers that come to mind. Moose Drool, which is still a top beer in my book. It's something that is overlooked because it's almost ubiquitous in Montana. You could get it anywhere. It's like one of those ones that came out when we were young kids. Like, I mean, before drinking age for us. You would see what's that one from New Belgium? Fat Tire. You'd see Fat Tire and you'd see Moose Drool, and then you'd see everything else. And before the craft beer scene exploded, but Moose Drool, there's still not a lot out there that touches Moose Drool to me.
Should I bring this episode full circle and say the brewery in Belt, Montana, Harvest Moon? Get some Belgian White. Belgian White.
Belgian White.
It's a pun on the Belgian White there. It's a good.
I love it.
It's a really good beer. It's pretty popular. You can find it anywhere in Montana. I'm gonna have to suggest a classic. I think it's a classic. I think it's a little bit underrated still, and probably now with all the other breweries since then probably got completely buried. But the Bozone Amber, one of my all-time favorite Montana beers at the Bozone Brewery over there. Is it Bozone, right? Or is that just the name of the beer? Gosh, it is the brewery. When we were in college, there was like
correct.
one brewery, two breweries in Bozeman. It's a little different landscape than it was.
I don't really remember.
Bozone Amber, one of my all-time favorite ambers. If you like ambers, that's probably my suggestion there. Because Jeremiah Johnson does not make an amber, so there's no conflict here, right?
Exactly. I'll definitely write all those names down and keep those. I'll put those in my notes. And then the next time I'm at a brewery, I'm going to have each one of those. I've had Moose Drool before. So the other two I have not. But anyway, you guys, thank you so much. It's been, such a pleasure to be on your show, and just keep it up because I really do listen. I'm an avid listener, so I really enjoy it.
Hey, we really appreciate that. And we want to give you a chance here right before you leave. Where can people find your work?
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Alex Eschelman on Twitter, Alex Eschelman on Facebook, Instagram, and I have a website that's Alex my first and last. There you go.
Consistent branding is key.
Yep, exactly.
We are our cat cast everything. So I hear you there. Well, I appreciate it, Alex. I'll let you go here. And, we'll go ahead and ask you this. We always end an episode with the Go Cats. I think we can probably get you one from you, right?
Oh, absolutely. Are we going to say it together, or do you want me to say it by myself?
I think we'll take turns. You can go first.
Okay. Go Cats!
Go Cats.
Go Cats.